Sometimes what starts as love and trust can slowly twist into something unrecognizable, leaving you questioning everything you believed about family, loyalty, and respect. This is a story about standing up when the world seems to turn against you and discovering strength you never knew you had. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this. But life has a strange way of cornering you, forcing you to either break down or speak up. I'm a man who has always worked with his hands. Not in a flashy way, not in some high-paying white-collar office, but in honest, physical labor. Carpentry, repairs, construction, you name it, I probably did it. I wasn't rich, but I made enough to support myself, to keep food on the table, and I took pride in the fact that at the end of the day, I could see the result of my work. That's who I was when I met her, my wife. At the beginning, she didn't seem to mind. She smiled when I'd come home tired and dusty. She'd laugh at my rough jokes. And she even said she admired that I wasn't afraid of real work. I thought I'd found someone who saw me for what I was, someone who wasn't going to look down on me for not wearing a tie every morning. But there were warning signs, small ones at first. Her parents, at our very first dinner together, smirked when I mentioned I was working on a construction site at the time. Her father raised an eyebrow and said, "Well, at least you'll never run out of things to fix, right?" The table laughed, and I laughed along too, though it stung a little. I told myself it was just a harmless joke. If only I'd known then that it wasn't harmless at all. It was the start of something much darker. At first, life after that dinner went on smoothly enough. My wife still smiled at me, still asked me about my day, and I was blind enough to think her parents' digs were a one-time thing. But slowly, I started noticing little cracks. When we'd go out with her friends, she'd joke about me, always smelling like sawdust. Everyone laughed, including me, though I could see the smirk in her eyes wasn't as playful as it used to be. Sometimes she'd nudge me and say, "Don't touch me. You'll ruin my dress with your dirty hands." She'd follow it with, "I'm kidding," but after a while, it didn't feel like a joke. The shift was subtle at first, but it grew. She'd complain when I sat on the couch after work, saying, "That's a clean sofa. Don't you get it dirty?" She'd roll her eyes when I wore my work boots out to grab a quick bite, like I was embarrassing her in front of strangers. And whenever I tried to talk about my projects or the pride I took in my work, she'd zone out. Or worse, cut me off with, "Why don't you think about finding something real? All the husbands of my friends work in offices. Why can't you?" The thing that burned me the most? She herself wasn't exactly living the dream. She worked a very average job at a local store, earning less than me. Yet somehow, in her mind, I was the one who wasn't good enough. I kept brushing it off, telling myself marriage had ups and downs, that maybe she was stressed, maybe her parents were pressuring her. But deep down, I was starting to feel it, like I was no longer a husband in her eyes, but some embarrassing project she was ashamed of. The real shift came not long after our first anniversary. By then, her parents' comments had gone from sly digs to outright criticism. At family dinners, her mother would loudly compare me to her friends' sons-in-law, men with shiny cars, pressed shirts, and office jobs. "They're going somewhere in life," she'd say, just loud enough for me to hear. My wife never defended me. If anything, she joined in. One evening, we were supposed to go to a friend's party together. I came home straight from the workshop, planning to shower and change. But before I could even set my tools down, she gave me this disgusted look and said, "Are you seriously planning to show up looking like that? You look like some worker who ran away from his shift." I laughed it off, thinking she was just being dramatic, and told her I'd be ready in 20 minutes after a shower. But she doubled down. "No, you don't get it. Even when you're dressed, you still look out of place. You don't fit in with my friends, and I'm tired of pretending you do." That hit me harder than any insult her parents had ever thrown. I asked her what the hell she meant, and she said something I'll never forget. "You're not like the other men. You're just stuck. You'll never be more than what you are now." And honestly, it's embarrassing. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I just stood there in silence, the words sinking deeper than I wanted to admit. Because for the first time, I realized this wasn't her parents' influence. This was how she truly saw me. And once you hear something like that, you can't unhear it. A few days after that party incident, I finally snapped. I came home from a long day, covered in the usual dust and sweat, when she immediately started in on me. "Don't sit there. You'll ruin the sofa. God, why can't you at least shower before walking into the living room?" I froze, still holding my lunchbox and tool bag. I'd heard this line before, but this time it was different. Something in me boiled over. I put everything down, looked her straight in the eyes, and asked, "Do you even like me anymore? Or do you just hate that I'm not the man your parents wanted you to marry?" She blinked, taken off guard, then crossed her arms and scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. I'm just asking for basic respect. A normal husband wouldn't come home looking like a construction worker every day." I couldn't believe it. I said, "That is who I am. I'm not pretending to be some guy in a suit. You knew that when you married me. So which is it? Was it all a lie back then? Did you only like me when it was convenient?" She rolled her eyes. "You're overreacting. I was just joking." But I could see it. She wasn't joking. There was nothing playful in her tone, nothing loving in her expression. She had contempt written all over her face. And when I pressed further, she snapped. "You'll never change. You'll always be this. And I don't want to spend the rest of my life with a man who looks like he just crawled out of a workshop." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark of my own living room, staring at the walls, realizing the woman I thought I knew was slowly slipping away. Or maybe she had never really been who I thought she was. The next weekend, we went to her parents' house for dinner, and I swear it felt like walking into an ambush. I hadn't even taken my jacket off before her father looked me up and down and said, "Still breaking your back for peanuts, huh? Don't you ever think about moving up in the world?" Her mother chimed in with a laugh. "Oh, leave him be. He's comfortable being simple. Some men just aren't meant for more." I waited for my wife to say something, anything, to stand up for me. But instead, she piled on. She smiled at her parents and said, "Well, you know him. He likes his sawdust and dirty boots. He wouldn't survive a day in an office." The three of them laughed, and it felt like someone had just poured acid into my chest. I put my fork down and said quietly, "Do you all enjoy talking about me like I'm not sitting right here?" That shut the table up for about 3 seconds before her father leaned back and shrugged. "Son, we're just telling the truth. No point in sugarcoating life." I looked at my wife. "And you agree with them?" She didn't even hesitate. "Well, they're not wrong." That was it. The line had been crossed. I pushed my chair back, stood up, and told them all, "If this is how it's going to be every time, don't bother inviting me anymore." Then I walked out, leaving my wife staring at me like I was the one who had just disrespected her. On the drive home alone, I realized something important. They didn't just dislike me, they despised me. And my wife wasn't being poisoned by them. She was part of it. After that dinner, I couldn't shake the weight pressing down on me. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, trying to figure out if I had somehow misunderstood, if maybe it really was just jokes that I was taking too seriously. But no matter how I spun it, the truth was the same. The people who were supposed to be my family didn't respect me. And worse, my own wife had joined them. Nights at home turned quiet and cold. I'd come back from work, wash up, and sit down hoping for a little peace, but she'd make small digs. "Don't put your boots there. God, you always smell like outside. Maybe you should think about night classes if you can even handle them." At first, I tried to push back gently, telling her I was proud of my work, reminding her that the bills were paid, the fridge was full, and she never had to worry about rent or a roof over her head. But every word out of my mouth just seemed to make her roll her eyes harder. And in the quiet moments, when she'd go to bed early without even saying goodnight, I felt it, the crushing sense that maybe I was a failure, that maybe I wasn't enough. I started questioning everything. Was I really so different from those men in offices? Was my work really worth so little? But underneath the sadness, anger started to simmer. Because deep down, I knew one thing. I had given her everything I had. My time, my energy, my love. And she treated it like it was dirt under her shoes. That mix, sadness, doubt, and anger, was the storm building inside me. I didn't know it yet, but that storm was going to break the night I came home and found my own key no longer worked. It happened on a Wednesday evening. I came home from work, tired but ready to eat and relax. I pulled my keys out of my pocket like always, slid one into the lock, and it didn't turn. At first, I thought maybe I'd grabbed the wrong key, but after trying every one on my ring, the truth hit me. The lock had been changed. Confused and already feeling my stomach sink, I rang the doorbell. A moment later, she appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes cold. "What are you doing here?" she asked, like I was some stranger. I frowned. "What do you mean? This is my house." She shook her head. "Not until you stop dragging dirt into it." I'm done watching you come home looking pathetic every day. All my friends' husbands have real jobs. They look like real men. You? You look like some worker who got lost on his way home. I can't live like this anymore." I just stood there, stunned. "You changed the locks?" Without even telling me. She smirked. "I had a locksmith come today. He said the old lock was too worn out anyway. Consider it a fresh start. When you decide to grow up and get a normal job, maybe I'll let you back in." Then I noticed movement behind her. Her parents were standing in the living room, nodding along like she was doing the right thing. Her father even added, "She deserves better, son. Don't come back until you're ready to be the man she needs." That's when it hit me. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment tantrum. This was planned. She had backup. They all thought they could push me out of my own life, my own home. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I just stared at them all for a long moment, then turned and walked away. Because while they thought they were throwing me out, they'd forgotten one very important fact. The house wasn't hers. It wasn't theirs. It was mine. I didn't go far that night. I drove straight to my buddy Mark's place. He and I had known each other since high school, and he was the kind of friend you could show up on the doorstep at midnight, and he'd still open the door with a beer in hand. When he saw me standing there with nothing but my tool bag, he raised an eyebrow. What the hell happened? I told him everything. The lock, the insults, her parents backing her up. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until he put the beer in my hand and said, "Sit down before you break the bottle." After I unloaded the whole story, Mark leaned back, whistling low. "Man, you know the house is yours, right? Didn't your grandparents leave it to you?" I nodded. "Title's in my name. Always has been. She has no claim." That's when the shift happened in me. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt a spark of power in my chest. Mark saw it too, because he grinned and said, "Then why are you standing out here looking like the kicked puppy? You've got leverage. You've got every damn card in your hand." He pulled out his phone, called up a lawyer he knew from his union, and within an hour I was sitting across from a man who listened carefully and then said words I'll never forget. "They've locked themselves into your house. Oh, this will be fun." For the first time since all this started, I smiled. The lawyer's name was Harris, and he had this calm, razor-sharp way of speaking that made you feel like every word was a chess move. After I explained everything, he leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "So, let me get this straight. They locked you out of your property, changed the locks without your consent, and are effectively squatting in your home." I nodded. He smiled, one of those slow, dangerous smiles. "Good. That makes this simple." I raised an eyebrow. "Simple? Feels like a mess to me." "That's because you're looking at it emotionally," Harris said. "I'm looking at it legally. Here's what we're going to do. We won't just evict them. We'll make a statement. We'll file for immediate possession since the deed is in your name, and once that's in motion, we'll serve them publicly. I'll have them served while they're inside your house, with witnesses. The humiliation will be the cherry on top." Mark laughed, clapping his hands together. "Oh, I like this guy." But Harris wasn't done. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "And here's the twist. We won't tell them right away. Let them think they've won. Let them get comfortable. Then, when they least expect it, we show up with the court order and watch their faces when they realize they're the ones getting thrown out." I sat back, letting it sink in. For weeks, I'd been treated like dirt, like I wasn't good enough, like I didn't matter. Now, for the first time, I wasn't just getting even. I was going to take back what was mine, and they wouldn't see it coming. And damn if that didn't feel good. The next week felt like playing a role in some secret heist movie. Harris moved fast. Papers were drawn up, filings submitted, and within days we had the eviction process in motion. Since the deed was crystal clear, there was no question of who the rightful owner was. It was just a matter of timing. In the meantime, I kept my distance. I didn't go near the house, didn't call, didn't even send a text. It must have driven her crazy, because Mark started getting screenshots from mutual friends of her social media. She was posting selfies in my living room, bragging about finally having a clean house, and throwing thinly veiled shade about real men who know how to take care of their wives. Every post felt like a jab, but Harris kept me grounded. "Let her dig her own hole," he said. "The more she broadcasts, the sweeter it'll be when she's kicked out." What really twisted the knife was seeing her parents in the background of some photos, sitting on my couch, drinking beer from my fridge, grinning like they'd won some kind of battle. But they didn't know what was coming. They didn't know that in less than a week, Harris and I had arranged for the court officer to show up at the house, not just to serve papers, but to walk them out, lock the door behind them, and hand me the keys back. It was all set. All I had to do was wait. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't look forward to seeing the looks on their faces. The morning of the eviction, I felt a mix of nerves and anticipation I hadn't felt in years. Harris and I arrived early, along with a court officer and a small crew of witnesses. Everything was legal, everything airtight. There was no way they could argue. I watched from the street as my wife came out of the house, coffee in hand, still smug, still believing she was untouchable. Her parents followed behind her, chatting and laughing like they owned the place. Harris gave me a nod. I took a deep breath, and we walked up to the door. The court officer presented the papers, stating clearly and loudly that the property belonged to me, and that they were legally required to leave immediately. At first, there was disbelief. My wife's eyes went wide, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "You what? This isn't, you can't." Her father sputtered. But the locks, she changed the locks." "Exactly," the court officer interrupted. "Without the owner's consent, it's invalid. You're legally trespassing." And then, chaos erupted. She screamed at me, tried to argue, her parents shouted over her, and Harris calmly walked in, documenting everything while guiding them to gather their things. I stood back, feeling a strange mix of vindication and disbelief, watching them scramble like children who'd just been caught stealing candy. By the time they hit the street, their faces pale and mouths hanging open, I walked in, dusted off my hands, and finally sat on my sofa. The house was quiet, peaceful, mine again, and that smug little smile I'd been missing from months ago finally returned. I didn't think I'd enjoy watching it, but I couldn't help it. From the sidewalk, I saw my wife's expression collapse in real time. The arrogance, the smugness, the sense of control, they all evaporated in an instant. She clutched her purse like a lifeline, her face pale, eyes wide, mouth open but no words coming out. Her parents were no better. Her father's jaw was tight. Her mother's hands trembled as they realized the truth. They had been cheering for a conquest that didn't exist. They all looked at me as if I were some magician who had just pulled the rug out from under them. My wife tried one last desperate tactic, raising her voice and flailing. "You can't do this. We lived here." I. Harris calmly interrupted. "You had no legal claim. The property belongs to him, and the court has ruled. Please gather your things and leave." I could see the shock in her eyes turning into anger, then into disbelief, and finally a deep, heavy shame. That's when I realized something. I wasn't just reclaiming my house. I was reclaiming my dignity. They left in a hurry, muttering, shouting, but unable to reverse a single thing. And for the first time in months, I felt free. The house was quiet for the first time in what felt like years. Sitting in my workshop the next morning, sipping coffee, I allowed myself to breathe. The anger, the humiliation, and the sadness that had weighed on me for months had finally lifted. I thought about my wife and her family, how they had treated me, dismissed me, and humiliated me for choosing a path they didn't understand. And I realized something important. None of it had been about my work, my life, or even me. It had been about control, about appearances, about their twisted idea of what a real man should be. Reclaiming my home wasn't just about property. It was about reclaiming my self-respect. I didn't need their approval, their praise, or their validation. I had built my life with my own hands, and no one could take that away. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not smugly, not in revenge, but with genuine relief. I had survived their contempt, I had stood my ground, and I had proven, above all, that I was enough just as I was. Looking back, I realize now that I spent too much time trying to fit into someone else's definition of success. I let their opinions, their jokes, their criticisms eat at me. I tried to bend, to soften myself, to earn approval that was never going to come. If I could give advice to anyone in a similar situation, it would be this: know your worth before anyone else tries to define it for you. Respect is earned and demanded, not begged for. Stand firm in your life choices, and don't let anyone belittle what you do or who you are. And most importantly, protect what is yours, whether that's your home, your dignity, or your peace of mind. Sometimes, life will test you with people who don't support you, who mock you, or even try to take what is rightfully yours. But if you stay grounded, If you act smart and decisively, you can turn the situation around, and sometimes in ways they'll never see coming. I learned all of this the hard way, but at least I learned it. Months have passed since that day, and the house has finally felt like home again. I wake up in the morning, make my coffee, and walk through the rooms without flinching or expecting judgment. The workshop is mine, the sofa is mine, and for the first time in years, I feel completely at peace. I don't harbor hatred for them, not anymore. I've realized that their cruelty said more about them than it ever did about me. I learned that standing up for yourself doesn't make you petty or vengeful, it makes you strong. Life is too short to live under someone else's ridicule or to allow others to dictate your worth. I rebuild, I work, I laugh, and I do it on my own terms. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: protect your dignity, trust your instincts, and never let anyone make you feel like you're not enough. The world will always throw people at you who try to belittle your life choices, but when you stand firm, you win in the ways that truly matter. And sometimes, winning isn't loud, it's simply reclaiming your life.